Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. Lord, it's good enough for me. It was good for Paul and Silas. Good for Paul and Silas. It was good for Paul and Silas. Lord, it's good enough for me. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. Lord, it's good enough for me. We're at chapter 15. Samson's about to fuck up some Philistines, guys. These Philistines, they suck. Samson is a gangster. He's about to defeat them. Chapter 15, 296 in the current Catholic Bible. That's what I'm reading. Hope you're having a wonderful morning. Happy 6:30 a.m. Samson defeats the Philistines. I was waiting for someone to defeat these Philistines. I couldn't wait, honestly. That's why I do these so early, because I'm just so excited to get into it. Okay, after a while, at the time of the wheat harvest, so this is like autumn, Samson went to visit his wife with his kid, and he said, I will go into my wife in the chamber. That means sex in the Bible, go in. But her father would not allow him to go in his father would not allow him to go in. Cock blocking this chamber wife, this guy. Doesn't he know he's Samson? Doesn't he have the sexy locks? Her father said, I really thought that you utterly hated her. So I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister fairer than she? Pray take her instead. And Samson said to him, This time I shall be blameless in regard to the Philistines, when I do them mischief. So Samson went and caught 300 foxes, took torches, turned them tail to tail. Yeah, we already did this. He wants him to be with the younger daughter, and he lights torches in between 300 foxes, and then kills a bunch of them with the jawbone of an ass, which is that song, Samson and Delilah, the jawbone. He murdered 1,000 people with the jawbone, this Samson guy. Samson and Delilah, chap 16. Dun, 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 dun. Samson went to Gaza. There he saw a harlot, and he went into her. Samson's just fucking throwing it around, guys. Throwing it in the harlots, going into the... Anyway, the Gazites were told, Samson has come here, and they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him. That old jawbone. All night at the gate of the city. They kept quiet all night, saying, let us wait till the light of the morning, then we will kill him. We got a Samson and Delilah opener in this one, dude. But Samson lay till midnight, and at midnight he arose and took hold of the doors of the gate of the city and the two posts, and pulled them up, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders. The posts? Yeah, he pulled the posts out. He's so strong, he just pulled the posts out of the ground, throws them on his shoulders, carries him to the top of the hill. Before he run, after this, he loved a woman in the valley Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came to her and said to her, entice him, and see wherein his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to subdue him. We will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. It's a weird amount. You would think he would just go with 1,000, but it's 1,100. And Delilah said to Samson, please tell me wherein your great strength lies. Tell me where your strength lies, if you please. Tell me wherein your great strength lies, and how you might be bound that one could subdue you. And Samson said to her, he spoke so kind, talked so fair. Samson said to Delilah, if they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings which have not been dried, then I shall become weak, like any other man. Then the Lord of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings, which had not been dried, and she bound with them. She bound him with them. Okay, she's trying to take away his strength. Delilah, trying to cuck her man Samson here. Now she had men lying in wait in an inner chamber, and she said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he snapped the bowstrings, as a string of tow snaps when it touches the fire. So the secret of his strength was not known. And Delilah said to Samson, "Behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. Please tell me how you might be bound." And he said to her, "If they bind me with new ropes that have not been used, then I shall become weak like any other man." So Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them, and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." And the men lying in wait in the inner chamber. Okay, so there's a bunch of Philistines just in this chamber. But he snapped the ropes off his arms like a thread. Strong guy, this Samson. And Delilah said to Samson, "Until now you have mocked me, told me lies, tell me how you might be bound." And he said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my head with web and make it tight with the pin, then I shall become weak like any other man." So while he slept, Delilah took the 7 locks of his head and wove them into the web. She made them tight with the pin and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he awoke from his sleep, pulled away the pin, and loomed the web. And she said to him, "How can you say, 'I love you,' when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times. You have told me wherein your great strength lies." And when she pressed him hard with her words day after day, she urged him. His soul was vexed to death. And he told her all his mind and said to her, "A razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I be shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man." You were lying, Samson. The other times that you told Delilah the stuff that would make you weak like any other man, you were secretly still strong after that stuff. I don't know if I trust you anymore, Samson. But this is some serious seduction game here. When Delilah saw that he had told her all his mind, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, "Come up this once, for he has told me all his mind." Then the lord of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hands. She made him sleep upon her knees, and she called a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. So he's got dreads. Samson had dreads. That's pretty cool. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. Oh, it worked this time. She said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." You keep saying that, Delilah. He doesn't seem to be too worried about these Philistines. And he awoke from his sleep and said, "I will go out as at other times and shake myself free." And he did not know that the Lord had left him. And the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze feathers. Feathers, not feathers. Feathers, bronze feathers would be cool. I don't know what a bronze feather looks like. I'll have to Goog image. He ground at the mill in the prison. And he ground at the mill in the prison. Okay, so he's bound with bronze feathers. Bronze feathers. So he has bronze shackles. I assume that's what it means. Like unfettered. So it's like he's trapped by a bronze. Famously the 3rd strongest metal. And pretty big at the time that this book was written. You might even call it the Age of Bronze. Something I came up with. A little shorthand for this period of evolution. And he ground at the mill in the prison. And ground. So he ground. I don't know what it means he ground at the mill. But the hair in his head began to grow after it had been shaved. Okay. So he shaved off his head and tied him to a mill in the prison with bronze shackles. And gouged his eyes out. This is like Oedipus. Oedipus predates these myths by a long time. It's a better myth. Most of the Greek myths are better than this myth. This is just the most popular myth. Uh, Apparently, people get popular by imitating what's already popular, not by actually doing something original. Samson's death. Aw, Samson's gone. He's gonna die. Spoiler. Now the Lord of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to the Dagon in their house. The Dagon? It's like a dragon without an R. The Dagon. The Dagon in their house. And to rejoice, for they said, our God has given Samson, our enemy, into our hand. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, our God has given our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country. Ravager of our country, who has slain many of us. And when their hearts were merry, they said, call Samson, that he may make sport for us. So they called Samson out of the prison, and he made sport before them. They made him stand between the pillars. And Samson said to the lad, who held him by the hand, let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean against them. Now the house was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there. And on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women, who looked on while Samson made sport. He's blind at this point, right? They gouged his eyes out. Then Samson called to the Lord and said, O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen thee. I pray thee only this once, O God, that I may be avenged upon the Philistines for one of my 2 eyes. And Samson, okay, so eye for an eye. Samson's eye is worth all the Philistines. I don't know what the other eye is with. Samson grasped the 2 middle pillars upon which the house rested, and he leaned his weight upon them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other. Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. Then he bowed with all his might, or he bowed with all his might? I think he bowed with all his might. He has a lot of might. I assume he's bowing with it. Bowing all his might. Samson Bowie. Samson Bowie. The house fell upon the lords and upon the people that were in it. So the dead, whom he slew with his death, at his death. Okay, so he did die with the Philistines because he's so strong that he tore the house down. He slew with his death were more than those whom he had slain during his life. So he killed like all the Philistines because it must have been a big house because he ripped it down while he was being put to death. And he killed more people than he had already killed. And he killed more than 1,000 people just with the jawbone. Then his brothers, all his families came down, took him, brought him up, buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah, his father. He judged Israel 20 years. Chapter 17, Micah and the Levite. There was another man of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Micah. He said to his mother, the 1,100 pieces of silver which were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse, and also spoke it in my ears. Behold, the silver is with me. I took it. I'm alive. I got the silver. And his mother said, blessed be my son by the Lord. And he restored the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother. And his mother said, I consecrate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son to make a graven image and a molten image. Now, therefore, I will restore it to you. So when he restored the money to his mother took 200 pieces of silver, gave it to the silversmith, who made it into a graven image and a molten image. And it was the house of Micah. And Micah had a shrine. He made an ephod and a teraphim. And installed teraphim station, guys. Installed one of his sons, who became a priest, his priest. Micah's kid is a priest. Those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. That must have been pretty sweet. No king. Anarchism, anarchist Israelites. Now there was a young. I mean, he was making like molten images. Now there was a young man in Bethlehem, in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he sojourned there. And the man departed from the town of Bethlehem in Judah to live where he could find a place. As he journeyed, he came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah. And Micah said to him, "From where do you come?" And he said, "I am a Levite of Bethlehem in Judah. I'm going to sojourn where I may find a place." And Micah said to him, "Stay with me, be to me a father and a priest, and I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year in a suit of apparel. You're living, and you're living." So he's like, "Be my priest, and I'll pay you 10 silvers a year." With inflation, that would be like 1.5 silvers. The Levite was content to dwell with the man. The young man became to him like one of his sons. And Micah installed the Levite. The young man became his priest and was in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, "Now I know the Lord will prosper me because I have a Levite as a priest." What happened to his son being the priest? He's from the family of Judah. He wants to upgrade his priest, I think. And then he's like, once he's his priest, he's like, "Well, you're like my son." Or maybe that was. Anyway, Dan has to migrate, guys. We can't just stay on Micah and the Levite all day. If I had my way, I would tear this building down. That's what he did. That's what that song's about. Most songs are from this book. So if you want to write songs, it's a good book. Migration of Dan. Where's Dan headed? Those days there's no king of Israel. Those days the tribe of the Danites was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in. For until then, no inheritance among tribes of Israel had fallen to them. So the Danites sent 5 able men from the whole number of their tribe, from Zorah, from Eshtaol, to spy out the land and explore it. And they said to them, "Go and explore the land." And they came to the hill country of Ephraim, the house of Micah, who lodged there, lodging. When they were by the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. And they turned aside and said to him, "Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What is your business here?" And he said to them, "Thus and thus has Micah dealt with me. Thus and thus has Micah dealt with me. Thus and thus. He has hired me, and I have become his priest." They said to him, "Inquire of God, we pray thee, that we may know whether the journey on which we are setting out will succeed." And the priest said to them, "Go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord." The 5 men departed and came to Laish, and saw people who were there, how they dwelt in security, after the manner of the Sidonians, quiet and unsuspecting, lacking nothing that's here on earth, and possessing wealth, and how they were far from the Sidonians, and had no dealings with anyone. And when they came to their brethren at Zorah and Eshtaol, their brethren said to them, "What do you report?" They said, "Arise, and let us go up against them. For we have seen the land, and behold, it is very fertile. And will you do nothing? Do not be slow to go, and enter in and possess the land. When you go, you will come to an unsuspecting people. The land is broad, yeah, God has given it into your hands, a place where there is no lack of anything that is on earth." It's going to be the easiest battle ever. These people are fat and rich. They're not suspecting that our boys are coming up to to tribe of Dan here. Dan tribes. I like the tribe of Dan because all the rest of the tribes have these really fun, antiquated names, like the Jebusites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and then it's just like the Danites. It's just like, yeah, Dan. It's not even Daniel. Like everybody else has like a fancier version of an anglicized name, but this guy has a nickname of an anglicized name. It's just Dan. Danites. And it's almost donuts. And I love a donut. Sorry, I need my nicotine. Starbucks isn't open, which is bullshit. I went there at 6 o'clock to do my 6:30 mass, get my blood of Christ, my diary of Christ, and yeah, they're slacking. Lincoln Park Starbucks. I'm gonna send the Danites after you. 5 men who had gone out to spy the country of Laish said to their brethren, "Do you know that these houses, there is an ephod?" Okay, so they got an ephod in these homes here. Teraphim, a graven image and a molten image. Yeah, I knew God was going to be pissed about the graven image and the molten image. He specifically made that a commandment. Now, therefore, consider what you will do. And they turned aside thither and came to the house of the young Levite, the home of Micah, and asked him his welfare. Now, the 600 men of the Danites, armed with their weapons of war, stood by the entrance to the gate, just loitering. 5 men who had gone to spy out the land went up and entered and took the graven image, the ephod, the teraphim, and the molten image, while the priest stood at the entrance to the gate with 600 men armed with weapons of war. And when these went into Micah's house, took the graven image, the ephod, the teraphim, and the molten image, the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" And they said to him, "What are you doing, guys?" They said to him, "Keep quiet, put your hand upon your mouth, and come with us. Be to us a father and a priest. It is better for you to be a priest in the house of one man." Oh, is it better? Okay, so he's being like, join the winning side. That's an alternate definition of surrender, is to join the winning side. So he's offering the priest, "Isn't it better for you?" He says, "Is it?" But I would say, "Isn't it better for you to be a priest in the house?" Okay, no, I wouldn't, because it says "or." "Is it better for you to be the priest in the house of one man, or is it better for you to be the priest of a tribe and family in Israel?" The priest's heart was glad. He took the ephod and the teraphim and the graven image, and he went in the midst of the people. Probably why he's priest. So they turned and departed, putting the little ones and the cattle and the goods in front of them. When they were a good way from the home of Micah, the men who were in houses near Micah's house were called out, and they overtook the Danites. Oh, Dan's going to get. They overtook them. And they shouted to the Danites, who turned around. They do have weapons of war. War was so much cooler before they invented guns. You had to actually, like, physically. Now it's just so impersonal and talentless. It's just like real life first person shooter. It was lit back then. I think they probably had like things that swing around. They talk about like impaling people and crushing them. Samson just crushed thousands of people with a house, killed all the Philistines. Debatable whether he killed all the Philistines. Some like folks who turned around and said to Micah, "What ails you that you come with such a company?" And he said, "You take my gods which I made, and the priest, and go away. And what have I left? How then do you ask me what ails you?" This is like, this is a good thing. "What ails you, you come with such a company?" And he said, "You take my gods which I made, and the priest, and go away. And what have I left? How then you ask me what ails you?" He's just throwing it back in his face. This is some sass. And the Danites said to him, "Do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall upon you, and you lose your life and the lives of your household." Then the Danites went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, and he turned and went back to his home, ran away like a puss. Danites settle in Laish, and taking what the Micah had made, and the priest who belonged to him, the Danites came to Laish to a quiet people and unsuspecting, a people quiet and unsuspecting. I want to bring that back to putting adjectives at the end of the sentence instead of the beginning. Instead of saying a quiet and unsuspecting people, you say to a people unsuspecting and quiet. It's beautiful. It's a prettier way to say it. And smote them with the edge of a sword, and burned the city with fire. And there was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no dealings with anyone. It was in the valley which belongs to Bethrahab, and they rebuilt the city and dwelt in it. And they named the city Dan, after the name of Dan, their ancestor, who was born in Israel by the name, but the name of the city was Laish, and at the first. So first they called it Laish, then they named it Dan after Dan. These are our Danites killing these Micah. And the Danites, or Micah is the Danite leader, I guess. And the Danites set up a graven image for themselves. And Jonathan, the son of Gershom, son of Moses, and his sons were priests of the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. So they set up Micah's graven image, which he made, as long as the house of God was at Shiloh. Chapter 19, the Levite's concubine. In those days, when there was no king in Israel, a certain Levite was sojourning in the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, who took to himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. And his concubine became angry with him, and she went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah, and was there some 4 months. Then her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back. So she's already married, and he just took her for a concubine. Shout Levites. He had with him his servant and a couple of asses. And he came to her father's house. When the girl's father saw him, he came with joy to meet him. And his father-in-law, the girl's father, made him stay, and he remained there for 3 days. So they ate and drank and lodged there. On the 4th day, they arose early in the morning, and he prepared to go. But the girl's father said to his son-in-law, "Strengthen your heart with a morsel of bread." And the girl's father said to his son-in-law, "Strengthen your heart with a morsel of bread, and after that you may go." So the 2 men sat and ate and drank together. And the girl's father said to the man, "Be pleased to spend the night, and let your heart be merry." And when the man rose up to go, his father urged him till he lodged there again. And on the 5th day he arose early in the morning to depart. And the girl's father said, "Strengthen your heart and tarry until the day declines." Just tarry all day. All day tarry here. So they ate. Terry Gilliam. Actually, the Gileads are not tarrying very much so far. We do have. So they ate, both of them. They didn't eat. They both ate. They didn't. It's not cannibalism in this part. There's other parts. Like, body of Christ, blood of Christ, our main religious ritual based on a rabbi zombie cannibalist. But he rose up and departed. Oh, wait, no, I missed an important part. They both ate. When the man and his concubine and his servant rose up to depart, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, "Behold, now the day has waned toward the evening. Pray tarry all night long." All night long, all night. "Behold, the day draws to its close. Lodge here, and let your heart be merry. and tomorrow you shall arise early in the morning for your journey and go home. But the man would not spend the night. He rose up and departed, and arrived opposite Jebus, that is Jerusalem. Jebus. I didn't know Jerusalem used to be Jebus. It's kind of funny because he could have been named Jebus, the guy who gets born there later. It would kind of make more sense. He had with him a couple of saddled asses, and his concubine with him. Okay, he's got some donkeys, got a concubine. He's all good. When they were near Jebus, the day was far spent, and the servant said to his master, "Come now, let us turn aside the city of the Jebusites." The Jebusites. Oh, Jebus. But they were already Jebusites. But you would think it makes sense, the Jebusites. Spent the night in it. Okay, so go to the city of the Jebusites, opposite Jebus. That is Jerusalem. See, this book is like actually confusing. I read a lot of mythology, and this is you kind of have to read it a lot of times to get this one. When they were near Jebus, the day was far spent, and the servant had said to his master, "Come now, let us turn aside the city of the Jebusites, and spend the night in it." And his master said to him, "We will not turn aside the city of foreigners. We will not turn aside into the city of foreigners who do not belong to the people of Israel, but we will pass on to the Gibeah." Jerusalem doesn't belong to Israel. Jebus, Jerusalem, does not belong to Israel. It's foreigners. And he said to his servant, "Come and let us draw near to one of these places and spend the night at Gibeah or at Ramah." So they passed on their way, and the sun went down on them near something. Gotta turn the page, guys. Near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. And they turned aside there to go in and spend the night at Gibeah. And he went in and sat down in the open square of the city, for no man took them into the house to spend the night. So they're homeless. And behold, an old man was coming from his work in the field at evening. The man was from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was sojourning at Gibeah. The men of the place were Benjaminites. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the wayfarer in the open square of the city. And the old man said, "Where are you going? And whence do you come?" Whence do you come? Okay, so where are you going? Whence do you come means where did you come from? And he said to him, "We are passing Bethlehem in Judah to the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, from which I come." So he's from the hill country. "I went to Bethlehem in Judah. I'm going to my home, and nobody takes me into his house. We have straw for provender. We have straw and provender for our asses, with bread and wine for me and your maidservant and the young man with your servants. There is no lack of anything." The old man said, "Peace be to you. I will care for all your wants. Only do not spend the night in the square." So he brought him into his house and gave the asses provender, and they washed their feet and ate and drank. I wonder, it says they washed their feet. I think they had their feet washed by the maidservants and the manservants, likely, because these are people that don't lack anything. So I don't think they're washing their own feet. I think they're having their feet washed. Foot washing is still a thing that they do. Like Christian, even like the priests will do, will wash the feet of worshipers. Weird cult, guys. I'm joining, so it's gonna get weirder. Gibeah's crime. As they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, base fellows, beset the house round about, beating on the door, and they said to the old man, the master of the house, "Bring out the man who came into your house, that we may know him." And the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, "No, my brethren, do not act so wickedly. Seeing that this man has come into my house, do not do this vile thing." Okay, what is the vile thing? Behold, here we go. Okay, okay. Do not, that we may know him, do not do this vile thing. Behold, here are my virgin daughter and his concubine. Okay, so here's my virgin daughter, and he's got this concubine. Let me bring them out to them now, ravishing them and do with them what seems good to you. But against this man, do not so vile a thing. So he's like, here's my virgin daughter, here's my concubine. We just have concubines at this point. Shout Bronze Age. This cult rules. Never mind. I'm back on board with this cult. We have concubines and we just get their daughters. The men would not listen to him. So the man seized his concubine, put her out to them, and they knew her and abused her all night until the morning. That's not PG, guys. It's just like, okay. And as the dawn began to break, they let her go. And as morning appeared, the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house, where her master was, till it was light. Master? And her master rose up in the morning when he opened the doors of the house and went out to go on his way. Behold, there was his concubine laying at that door of the house with her hands on the threshold. Yeah, she got abused all night. So he said to her, "Get up, let us be going." But there was no answer. Then he put her upon the ass, and the man rose up and went to his home. And when he entered the house, he took a knife, laying hold of his concubine, and divided her limb by limb. Cast me off a Chinese wall and put my fingers on the rim. I come back in midair and land to reform. Limb by 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 limb by. I can kind of play that beat. Not really, but I can kind of play every beat and not really. Into 12 pieces, 12 limbs. He dissected her like fucking Dexter. Sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. I don't know if Dexter dissected people. I don't very well remember the details of the show Dexter on Showtime. I apologize. And all who saw it said, "Such a thing has never happened or been seen from the day the people of Israel came out of the land of Egypt until this day. Consider, take counsel, and speak." Okay, so yeah, she was abused all night. Then he took her home, and for no apparent reason, maybe because he was ashamed that she was like gang raped. It seems like he not only killed her, but he cut her limb by limb into 12 pieces. Never want my head cut off. Never want a hack and cough. Never turn my brain to mush. See, guys, it's all in here. The other tribes attack Benjamin. Then all the people of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead. The congregation assembled as one man, the Lord of Mizpah, and the chiefs of all people, of all tribes of Israel, presented them in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 men that drew on the sword. Now Benjamin heard that the people of Israel had gone up to Mizpah, and the people of Israel said, "Tell us, how is the wickedness brought to pass?" And the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, "I came to Gibeah that belongs to Benjamin, and my concubine to spend the night. And the men of Gibeah rose against me and beset the house round about me by night. They meant to kill me, and they ravished my concubine, and she is dead. And I took my concubine, cut her into pieces, sent her throughout the all country of the inheritance of Israel, for they have committed abomination and wantonness in Israel." That's another good drum beat. The wonton song. That's my like Bonham square root beat. "Behold, you people of Israel, all of you, give your advice and counsel here." And all the people arose as one man, saying, that wonton soup, guys. Eat that wonton soup. First, I drive my car. Then I fuck your bitch. Wet like wonton soup. Eat that wonton soup. Real trap shit, guys. Judges. This is fun. We will not go in any of this. We will not any of us go into his tent. Stay away from his tent. None of us will return to his house. But now, this is what we do to the Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. Yeah, dude. You have a Samson, Delilah into limb by limb. We're going up against it by lot. We will take 10 men of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, and 100 of 1,000, and 1,000 of 10,000. What are you, Gex? To bring provisions for the people, that when they come, they may requite Gibeah for Benjamin, for all the wanton crime which they have committed in Israel. So all the men of Israel gathered against the city, united as one man. It's like Voltron. They're like forming this like ultra Israel monster. The tribes of Israel sent through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What wickedness is this that has taken place among you? Now, therefore, give up the men, the followers of Gibeah, that we may put them to death and put away evil from Israel." But the Benjaminites would not listen to the voice of their brethren, the people of Israel, and the Benjaminites came together out of the cities of Gibeah to go out to battle against the people of Israel. So Israel versus Ben right now. Now, Benjaminites mustered out of the cities of Israel that day 26,000 men that drew their sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who mustered 700 picked men. Mustered 700 picked men. They mustered them. Among all these were 700 picked men who were left-handed. They had 700 lefties. Everyone could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. And the men of Israel, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 men that drew sword. All these were men of war. The people of Israel arose and went up to Bethel, inquired of God, "Which of us shall go up to battle against the Benjaminites?" And the Lord God said, "Judah shall go up first." Then the people of Israel rose in the morning and camped at Gibeah, and the men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin. The men of Israel drew up against the battle line against them at Gibeah. So the Benjaminites came out of Gibeah and felled to the ground, not fell to the ground, and felled to the ground on that day 22,000 men of the Israelites. But the people, the men of Israel, took courage and again formed battle line in the same place where they had formed it on the first day. The people of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening. They inquired of the Lord, "Shall we go up again near the battle against our brethren, the Benjaminites?" And the Lord said, "Go up against them." So the people of Israel came near against the Benjaminites the second day. So Benjamin went against them out of Gibeah the second day, felled the ground 18,000 men of the people of Israel. And these were men who drew the sword. So felled to the ground means killed. He felled them, like fell as a verb. Then all the people of Israel, the whole army, went up, came to Bethel, and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening, offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And the people of Israel inquired for the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, ministered before it in those days, saying, this is how he ministered, "Shall we yet again go out to battle the brethren of the Benjaminites, or shall we cease?" And the Lord said, "Go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand." So Israel set men in ambush round about Gibeah. And the people of Israel went up against the Benjaminites on the third day, and set themselves in an array against Gibeah, as at other times. And the Benjaminites went out against the people and were drawn away from the city. And as at other times, they began to smite and kill some of the people. The highways, one of which goes up to Bethel, and the other Gibeah. There is a highway that goes up to Bethel. In the open country, about 30 men of Israel. And the Benjaminites said, they are routed before us. And at the first, as at the first, they were routed before us as at the first. Gonna fell a bunch of men to the ground. The men of Israel said, let us flee and draw them away from the city to the highways. And all the men of Israel rose up in their place, set themselves in array of Baltimore, in array. So they set themselves in array at Baltimore. And the men of Israel who were in ambush, rushed out of their place to west of Geba. And there came the Gibeah, 10,000 men, picked out of all Israel. And the battle was hard. But the Benjaminites did not know that disaster was close upon them. And the Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel. And the men of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day. All these were men who drew the sword. So the Benjaminites saw that they were defeated. The men of Israel gave ground to Benjamin because they trusted to the men in ambush whom they had set against Gibeah. And the men in ambush made haste and rushed upon Gibeah. The men in ambush moved out and smote all the cities with the edge of a sword. Now, the appointed signal between the men of Israel and the men of ambush was that when they made a great cloud of smoke rise up out of the city. We want that smoke. We want all that smoke. YouTube. Give me that smoke. Give me that bat signal, the Jew bat signal of the smoke. Thirsty bitches. They are literally thirsty bitches. That's what it says. The men in ambush was that a great cloud of smoke rise up at the city. The men of Israel should turn in battle. So Benjamin had begun to smite and kill the 30 men of Israel. Oh, it's 30, not thirsty. Oh well, we're units of threes, units of tens, units of fives, units of sevens. If you want to do the math, you can figure out my phone number. It's in the playlist. They said, surely they are smitten down before us, as in the first battle. But when the signal began to rise out of the city in a column of smoke, the Benjaminites looked behind them. Behold, the whole city went up in smoke to heaven. Then the men of Israel turned, and the men of Benjamin were dismayed, for they saw that disaster was close upon them. Therefore, they turned their backs before the men of Israel in the direction of the wilderness. But the battle overtook them, and those who came out of the cities destroyed them in the midst of them, cutting down the Benjaminites. They pursued them and trod them down for Nohah, as far as opposite the Gibeah on the east. 18,000 men of Benjamin fell, all of them men of valor. And they turned and fled the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. 5,000 men of them were cut down in the highways, and they were pursued to Gedam, and 2,000 men were slain. So all who fell that day of Benjamin were 25,000 men that drew the sword, all of them valor. They're very valiant, these men. Drew the sword. Fighting bravely, many of them died. But 600 men turned and fled to the wilderness, to the rock of Rimmon, and abode at the rock of Rimmon 4 months. The men of Israel turned back against the Benjaminites, and smote them with the edge of a sword, men and beasts, and all they found. And all the towns which they found, they set on fire. Just burning everything down. The Benjaminites saved from extinction. Now the men of Israel had sworn at Mizpah, no one of us shall give his daughter in message to Benjamin. The people came to Bethel, sat there till evening before God, and they lifted up their voices and wept bitterly. And they said, O Lord, the God of Israel, why has this come to pass in Israel, that there should today be one tribe lacking in Israel? And on the morrow, sweet, it's back, guys. The people rose early. They started to switch to tomorrow, and I was bummed out about it. It's on the morrow. famously on the morrow. Nobody says tomorrow anymore, guys. The people of Israel said, which of all tribes of Israel did not come in the assembly of the Lord to the Lord? So which guys didn't show up? Oh, the people who pussied out and ran away? Yeah. For they had taken a great oath concerning him who did not come up to the Lord at Mizpah, saying, he shall be put to death. The people of Israel had compassion for Benjamin, their brother, said, one tribe is cut off from Israel this day. Facts. Which shall we do for wives for those who are left, since we have sworn by the Lord that we will not give them any of our daughters for wives? And they said, what one is there of the tribes of Israel that did not come up to the Lord at Mizpah? Behold, no one had come up from the camp of Jabesh Gilead to the assembly. For there, for when the people were mustered, behold, not one of its inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead was there. So the congregation sent thither 12,000 of their bravest men, commanded them, go and smite the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of a sword, also the women and little ones. Ugh. This is what you shall do. Every male and every woman that is lain with a male you shall utterly destroy. So you don't kill the virgins, because you're going to take the virgins, I assume. You kill every man and every woman that's not a virgin. They found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins, which had not known man, by lying with them, and they brought them to the camp at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. Then, nice, they got fresh concubines to divide into 8 pieces now. Then 12, sorry. Then the whole congregation sent word to the Benjaminites who were at the rock of Rimmon and proclaimed peace to them. And Benjamin returned to them at that time, but they gave the women whom they had saved alive of Jabesh Gilead, they did not suffice for them. And the people had compassion on Benjamin, because the Lord had made breach in the tribe of Israel, the tribes of Israel. Then the elders of the congregation said, what will you do for wives for those who are left, since the women are destroyed out of Benjamin? And they said, there must be an inheritance for the survivors of Benjamin, that a tribe be not blotted out from Israel. Yet we cannot give them wives of our daughters. Yeah, it's going to ruin the 12 tribes. Cute, it's like having 50 states. It's like, yeah, we have more. We have Guam, we have Puerto Rico, but we need 50 nifty United States and 13 original colonies. So I think they just want to keep 12 because the numbers are important in this book. That's what the book actually communicates mostly, is the number, or it says a thing. That's how I perceive not only music, but literature, complicated rhythmic patterns. At a deep level, I mean, like superficially, it's about the plot. But for the people of Israel had sworn, cursed be he who gives a wife to Benjamin. So they said, behold, there is a yearly feast at Shiloh, which is north of Bethel, on the east highway that goes up from Bethel to Shechem in south of Lebanon. They commanded the Benjaminites, saying, go and lie, and wait in the vineyards, and watch. If the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance in the dances, then come out to the vineyards, and seize each man his wife from the daughters of Shiloh. Go to the land of Benjamin. So, when their fathers or their brothers come to complain to us, we will say to them, grant them graciously to us, because we do not take for each man of them his wife in battle, neither did you give them to us, else you would now be guilty. The Benjamites did so, took their wives, according to their number, from the dancers whom they carried off. And then they went and returned to their inheritance, rebuilt the towns and dwelt in them. And the people of Israel departed from there at that time, every man to his tribe and family, and they went out there, every man to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. That's the end summary, and third time they say that. I'm going to read it again, because next is Ruth. Ruth is short. Ruth is like cute. Like, this is kind of intense. We did get Samson Delilah opener into a limb by limb bust out. But in those days, there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. I mean, they're following God, so they have direction, but he's correct. It is a pretty anarchic, scary period in time for the Israelites. I like how they keep talking about highways, because if you think about it, when you think of highway, you think of like what we have now as highways, like cement and automobiles. But back then, highways was just highways. It was just like, okay, well, there are some probably buildings and structures. They have like stone houses and stuff. Samson just crushed a bunch of Philistine fools with an entire house. Um, but yeah, so in those days, it was anarchy. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. Except they still get punished by God and they're still like warring ideas and stuff. Okay, guys. I was gonna make it to an hour. I read too fast. So to get to an hour, give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. Lord, it's good enough for me. It was good for Paul and Silas. It was good for Paul and Silas. It was good for Paul and Silas. Lord, it's good enough for me. Paul and Silas blessed out. Give me that. It was good for the Hebrew children. It was good for the Hebrew children. Lord, it's good for the Hebrew children, and it's good enough for me. It was good for me and my own mother. It was good for my own mother. It was good for my own mother. Lord, it's good enough for me. It was good for my own father. It was good for my own father. It was good for my own father. Lord, it's good enough for me. Makes me love everybody. Makes me love everybody. Makes me love everybody. And that's good enough for me. Gonna take us all to heaven. Gonna take us all to heaven. Gonna take us all to heaven. Lord, it's good enough for me. We will pray for Aphrodite. Pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite. Pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite. Pray for Aphrodite. We will 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 pray for Aphrodite. Lord, that's good enough for me. We will pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite, and that's good enough for me. We will pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite, and that's good enough for me. We will pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite, and that's good enough for me. We will pray for Aphrodite. Pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite, and that's good enough for me. We will pray for Aphrodite. Pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite, and that's good enough for me. We will pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite. We will pray for Aphrodite, and that's good enough for me. We will pray for Aphrodite. Pray for Aphrodite. She wears that see-through nightie, and that's good enough for me. We will pray with Aphrodite. Shabbat shalom. What else? Let's read. We can't read any more Bible. We're going to screw Ruth up. Let's read the foreword. Despite the decline of religious practices, the appetite for English people for new versions of Scripture is paradoxically greater than ever. Educated people are still expected to have some acquaintance with the Bible, even though religious convictions are no longer demanded. One need not be either a Christian or a scholar to recognize the Bible as great literature. The growth of literacy, greater numbers are able to enjoy the Bible's unique appeal. No other religious writing, however exalted, can compete with the inspired text. We welcome Catholic edition of the Revised Standard Version, not only because it will lead more people to read the Bible, but also because of its ecumenical value. May all who read it grow in knowledge and love of God's own word. Word up!